Good morning, everybody.
Hey, Anthony. How you doing?
Good. How's it going, Ryan?
Yeah, it's going good, thanks.
Good. Thanks for being a part of this.
Thanks for having me.
I'm going to grab out. Oh, man, 57. Awesome. Thanks, everyone, for coming on.
Thanks for putting this together.
Absolutely. We'll give everyone just a few more minutes to log on here.
Anthony, I like your pulse thing on the wall behind you. Is that intentionally meant to look like the Friends logo?
It was, yeah.
No.
We did a 90s theme pulse a few years ago. Actually, Wendy, who I just saw on the call, was a big part of that for us.
Awesome.
It was both like an amazing work experience and also personally one of the coolest things I've been a part of too. Just
Nice.
90s fan and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, very cool.
Sorry, didn't say hi. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Nicole. Cool. Well, I think we've got a decent amount of folks on already. So why don't we go ahead and get started? I can kind of kick things off here. Hey, Max, how's it going?
I'm in. Can you hear me?
Ben, sir, we can hear you. So just really quickly, just to sort of level set, I was on Sunday just getting groceries or trying to get whatever was left on the shelves, and had this idea because I had been reaching out to a bunch of kind of other CMOs in my network, other leaders that I've met, and just asking questions of, what are you guys seeing in your business? What's going on with lead gen? Is everyone working from home? Like these different kind of questions that frankly, all of us, I think, are navigating now either for the first time or surely, not something we all have, a lot of experience. And so I felt very lucky that I had folks that I can kind of have a small network with to ask these types of things. And so that's where sort of the idea was born, just having kind of a weekly just check-in, very little agenda, just a chance to kind of take some questions and just turn to each other and ask each other kind of what are you seeing in your world? And just maybe we can find a path to kind of get through this together as a marketing community. So that's the idea. And the marketer in me was like, great, I need a landing page. It's got to connect to HubSpot and I need a website and I need webinar software. I was like, you know what, this is just raw kind of humans kind of talking and, let's just do it in a Google sign up sheet and invite in a Zoom meeting just to make it very authentic. So this isn't meant to be like a marketing motion at all. This is meant to be just a chance for us to talk. So what that means is you might have to forgive things like 115 people, muted, unmuted, those types of things. So we just ask that, folks stay muted unless you have something you wanted to ask. I've got a bunch of questions that came in overnight. So thanks to those that asked the question for this group. But yeah, just any sort of chance to kind of stay muted when not talking would be helpful. And with that, so I'm excited to introduce our co-host for today, for this week's session. Unfortunately, Megan Eisenberg, had a all hands meeting at Trip Actions that got scheduled right over this meeting. And so she's going to be back in 2 weeks and get back into the rotation. But we've got Max from Outreach here, which I'm super excited, Max, to have you on, and Ryan from G2 have you on as well. So thank you both for being a part of it. Where I thought we'd start first is just sort of like the state of the union in terms of kind of what you're seeing in your businesses. How's the company kind of handling, COVID? Like, what's the impact been so far internally? And I can go last.
Yeah, Ryan, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, sure. So A little bit of a weird situation for me. I was actually on PTO and on vacation for the last few weeks and got back for the craziness of immigration this weekend. And so I've just been getting up to speed on everything. But I think, I mean, at G2, we've obviously been following kind of all of the best practices, I think, in terms of just health and safety. So everyone's working from home. It's kind of business as usual, I guess, in inverted commas, if you want to say. Obviously, it's really different. And I was actually on a webinar with Megan this morning, a little bit before her other thing. And I mean, it's definitely not business as usual in her world, given she's in the travel space. So I think, we're a little bit fortunate at G2 that we're actually seeing quite a bit of an increase in buyer demand for remote from work, like video conferencing and all those sorts of technologies. So that's been like an interesting silver lining, but it's still like very new, I think, for us all as a company and trying to work out how best to manage it, to be honest, and just even how best to manage remote working communications, because we give our employees a lot of flexibility to work from home whenever they need to, but the reality is most people probably only work from home 1 or 2 days. So we still do a lot of stuff in person. So yeah, it's still very new for us, but we're getting used to it, I guess.
Yeah, we're Seattle HQ. So we've been shut down for a while now because Seattle was kind of ground zero for us in the US, the first place where it really spiked. And our CISO and HR and leadership has done a really good job of, making sure everybody has what they need. We moved everybody to work from home pretty quickly. And there's some nuances. This is not just remote work. This is remote work with some caveats. Everybody's working remote right now. So you've got like certain age group, the SDRs maybe, and the younger folks on our team who are home and they've got lots of roommates. And so they're trying to figure out where in their apartment they're going to work and how that's going to work. And then you've got, the next level up from there. Maybe it's, a couple that doesn't have kids yet. And they're like fine. Like, oh, one person takes this room, the other person takes this room. And then you've got the cohort of people who have kids at home that normally aren't home. And the significant other's also home that normally isn't home. So it's not just the regular work from home. It's work from home and everybody's working from home. And how do you run the team that way? And I'd say, I'd love to say it's business as usual. We still have aggressive goals. We haven't changed those. We haven't taken anything down. But there are plenty of times where it's like, hey, Max, Jack has a fever this morning. Obviously, we don't have daycare and nothing else. I have to take care of the kids. So, you have to manage the situation with supreme empathy and understanding. And, things aren't moving as fast. It's just what it's going to be. And that's okay. It's all right. We have to manage through this, and this too shall pass, and we'll see how long it takes. But it's not just work from home. It's work from home with a lot of different nuances that aren't necessarily typically there. So I think we're all learning together internally as different business units, how to best manage our teams and how to understand when the work's going to get done, how the work's going to get done. And if we're going to need to adjust any goals or, deadlines or timing on things. So far, the team has been great about, one of our core values is have your back. So the team has been really good about picking up, the workload when, somebody else does have a child with a fever that's home and has to attend to that situation, which, family first, you got to do, right? So, it's been interesting. It's been also amazing to see, people rallying and supporting the rest of the organization. And then from a marketing standpoint, we had to cut field events for the first half of the year. So how are we responding to that? We're moving a lot of things to digital. We're trying to get creative. What are all of our digital options? Can we do webinars? Can we do surveys? Can we get with communities and run surveys with communities, partner with them? So part of it's branding, part of it's content creation for us, part of it's direct lead generation, part of it's, creating that content for lead generation. So I'm sure we'll go into more of this as we go, but, we were one of those unfortunate companies that had to cancel our conference. We had a 3,000 person conference planned for the first week of April, and we had to cut that and cancel that, obviously due to COVID, early March. So we had to make that call. So we've had to pivot and on a dime, and turn the entire team and company in another direction and unravel an event that we spent 9 months working on. So it's been definitely not business as usual, but we're trying.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I definitely want to get into the events stuff here in a bit. There were several questions that came in about kind of what now, kind of what do we do now? On our side, I agree. I think we're all learning together. Pretty early on, maybe a few weeks ago, we created this like kind of scenario-based chart that said, if we move into stage 3 in one of our offices, then we're going to take this course of action. But very quickly, everything turned red for us. So we have a big office in Paris. Obviously, France is on lockdown right now, or parts of Paris are in lockdown. San Francisco, we didn't have a massive work from home culture at Front, frankly. And so this is really pushing us a lot culturally to figure out how we can stay productive. And we're doing a number of things to try to get that. But the idea of business as usual, how I would put it is, I think we're learning every literally hour on what's changing. And we're learning together. But for now, what we're seeing, and honestly, like this week's episode, and every week might be different, is that people are still buying software. That at least in the world that we're in, we're selling communication tools to small businesses, large businesses, and the need to connect with customers is something that's still relevant and arguably hyper relevant in times of uncertainty. So for now, we're still seeing lead gen continue to grow. Our end of quarter is at the end of March. And so when it comes to kind of planning for Q2, we're still trying to figure that piece out as we speak. So totally empathize with that. And I'm curious for you all, there were several questions around work from home. Do you find as a marketing leader that you're being called on from whether it's the people team or the CEO to try to invest in culture remotely? Like, how do we make sure our teammates feel supported, feel like they can be productive and make impact? Do you find that marketing is intervening in that side of this crisis?
I guess what we've seen on our front is that it's been really amazing, actually, just looking at employees across the company that have been creating their own documents and their own best practices to share with just the broader company. So we had folks on our research team, folks on our sales team, folks in marketing, each just individually creating kind of, whether it was a Zoom coffee hangout or a Zoom lunch hangout regularly, or just even kind of we, as part of our culture, we have these peak values: performance, entrepreneurship, authenticity, and kindness. And so we give these award cards out as part of it. And I'm not sure who, but someone turned these physical cards into now digital cards. And so we've seen a lot of people sharing those still digitally through Slack and on LinkedIn. And so it's been really nice, actually, to not feel like we've needed to be called on that front. And the team themselves have actually just, the values are so infused that they've just been doing that to connect with each other, which has been obviously beautiful to see. I feel like on the comms front, where I've been probably called on more is more around kind of public facing comms, really, and how to think through some of that, which happy to talk about now, but it's probably a bigger discussion as well.
Yeah, I'd say my answer mirrors Ryan's. It's been cool to see all the teams come together and bring their ideas into the fold. And it's for SDRs all the way to leadership across the board. But we have a Slack channel called Remote Life with a Y. They make it fun. You make it okay, share some best practices in here. What is everybody doing? What's some random fun stuff? Let's do remote happy hours. Share the Zoom link in there. Teams are doing their own remote happy hours where they're playing games together. My EA is setting up I spoke to her yesterday. She's setting up a remote video game tournament for Overwatch or something like that with the engineering team. So they're doing their own thing. They these little, the pods have their own stuff that they're doing together, which is really cool to see everybody kind of coming together and rallying around it and still, when we are, when things are back to normal or when they are, typically how they are, we have a weekly happy hour that the company pays for across the street at Queen Anne Beer Hall. And, we're 600 employees spread out, but like we still have these kind of traditions. And so we're trying to mirror those, I guess, as an organization, and the teams are doing a really good job of kind of rallying around it, making sure they're staying in touch. And I think that's like, part of the hiring process. You have your core values and the things that you look for when you hire people, and you want to hire people who, are bought into the mission for your business and, care about others and, like genuinely want to engage like this. So it's cool to see. It's cool to see reinforced by, the organization. But as far as marketing getting pulled in goes, yeah, it's mostly just, public comms. How are we framing things? How are we launching things? How are we talking about things in this time? And it's a weird balance. I saw some questions in here about writing content at this time, and you want to be a marketer and you want to, obviously have excitement around your product, but it's tough. It's a tough time to, one, get attention, and two, anybody to be excited about anything. Not only do you have the virus, but you also have the market going south. So you have two different things that are, making people pretty, shocked, bummed out, whatever it is. And it's a tough time. So marketing's job is, it's a weird place. It's something I don't think any of us have ever been through. And even, Margaret on our team, our CMO, who's been, she did 20 years at Microsoft, she's been through some of these turbulent times, and this is still, new. There's no playbook for this.
Totally. Why don't we get into it? Because I think that's where the majority of these questions are coming from. And I think all of us are trying to navigate is to how do we hit the number? How do we maintain momentum? I think I saw a question come in at how do we think about, demand creation and from a sales perspective, hitting the target. From my perspective, one of the things we're looking at are the leading indicators to try to figure out in our business, again, like when, are we starting to see some slowdown at the top of funnel, which obviously will have impact and ramifications for deals. We're, for us so far, I think so good. But, we're looking at things weekly, so it'll be interesting to see how this week rounds up. What we're seeing is some verticals in which we sell to that have been hardest hit. Front does have a go-to-market in travel, which obviously has been hit quite a bit. Front has a go-to-market for the logistics industry, which is starting to rebound. In those cases, we've seen some deals push out of Q1, but not close. We think that everyone has this sort of sentiment of, there's just uncertainty. We don't know when this thing's going to end. And so we still understand the value proposition. We still need this product. But I just can't think about procuring it right now. So that's one thing I think in the hardest hit segments that we've seen, but for the majority of our business, which is again, more towards like pure play kind of software companies, so far, so we're seeing some of the leading indicators still be pretty positive.
Yeah, I think it depends on the industry you're in, obviously, right? And what you need. It was interesting. I don't think Megan would mind me sharing, but she talked about it on that webinar we were on earlier around how they basically researched and procured some new, I think it was like not help desk software, but it was essentially kind of like a customer community software for like Q&A, like from literally deciding they needed it to like acquiring it within 5 hours and going through negotiations and everything with the vendor. And so, I mean, I guess depending on obviously your company's needs and the sector of tools that might help you, things might also be speeding up. It's hard separate to kind of just thinking about our own business. I think one thing that I'm trying to like not do is to kind of like go down that like negative spiral of thinking about all the businesses being negatively impacted. So, a little random like fun fact about me: when I was younger, I was an international flight attendant, and in Australia, I think the government has now basically said like no flights are leaving or entering Australia for maybe until the end of May. So obviously I have a lot of flight attendant friends who are being laid off. And then I was thinking about that, and then kind of thinking about like, I have friends that work at Away, the luggage company, obviously a really cool startup growing really fast. I don't imagine people are buying lots of suitcases right now. And then it kind of just cascades from there, right? You can start to just like see the domino effect, and that's kind of scary. And I don't recommend anyone do that if they're listening to me talk about this, because it's not a fun visualization.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a customer I was talking to the other day at a company called Resi, and they do online reservations like OpenTable. So, they've completely stopped all outbound prospecting, cold prospecting right now. Only working with companies that are in cycle, really empathetic approach, completely put a halt on the business. Fortunately for them, they sold to Amex recently, so they can do that, but had they been a standalone company still, this could be something, depending on how long it goes, that could potentially sink them, right? So it's tough times out there for some of these companies. And I think, for us, fortunately, our businesses, it's good in work. It's good for work from home. It's good for remote. And when you have to think about the angles in which you're going to go to market, and not necessarily about the audiences, but like for Megan, for example, for Trip Actions, people aren't traveling right now, but you have to keep selling, right? So could your message change from your company's traveling right now, we need to get you on planes, use Trip Actions to do it, to hey, this is a good time to reset your process, rebuild your process that you have from a travel arrangement standpoint in your business. So you have to see what's going to resonate with the audience that are out there right now, and rejigger your messaging, rejigger your go-to-market. Obviously, having to come with a much more empathetic message. We have some messaging that we're using right now that is, hey, I understand this now is not the right time. Of course, there's a lot higher priority things, but what is the best way for me to keep in touch with you, through this period? I don't want to bother you, type thing. So we're seeing more positive results with that from an outbound standpoint. It doesn't matter what industry you're approaching. Everybody's kind of scared right now, right? So it's tough, but people are still buying. AT&T is a big customer of ours. They just signed a pretty big expansion with us, and people are still paying their cell phone bills. Business is still operating. So I think for us, it's figuring out what's the new messaging in a time like this. Definitely don't want to come off as trying to capitalize on any opportunities that are happening right now, but it just so happens for our business that there are things like outreach helps all things that remote hurt, right? So how do we tailor a message to that? I understand that some things are going to stall, some things are going to push, but it's going to also open up other opportunities for us. All the field salespeople just came in-house, just started working from home. So how do is there a way for us to rejigger our messaging for all these field salespeople who now just opened up as way higher potential customers for us? This is just an example of kind of how we're thinking about it and what we're doing, but I'd imagine there's some key takeaways for other businesses
and
as
just
well.
add on what Max said, Anthony, I think if any time now is the time for marketing to really become that revenue center, right, and not be a cost center. And so I think if you're a marketing manager or a marketing director or a marketing VP or a leader, or even leading from as an individual contributor, now's the time to really think about really agile. How can I help out my boss to help out their boss, etc., to help out sales ultimately to drive more efficient revenue for the company? And so if that means cutting certain events or converting things to being digital, I think messaging right now, to Max's point though, is obviously one of those areas where people can really quickly help. So I just literally right before I jumped on this, I saw our brand and product team, led by Lauren Decker and Yoni Solomon. They just put together this really comprehensive messaging guide for how to message and communicate with prospects and customers during these times, which was talking about we normally have, obviously, we call them our GQ cards, which is CUEQ for how our sales reps should think about selling to different personas. And, they normally talk about the different challenges that marketers face. So, if you're a CMO, your challenge is more about thinking about revenue and costs. If you're a demand gen marketer, you're thinking more about CPA, etc. And so they've kind of taken all of that and now kind of put the lens of, okay, in the times that we're in right now, how do these challenges and values, how have they shifted? and what is more important to each of these personas now, and how can you kind of speak to what matters most to them. And I think that's like a sensitive topic, obviously, right? Because I don't, this is just my opinion, but I feel like if you do have a product or a service or something that can help in some of these ways, like just call out like the feature and the functionality and the value, but I don't think you necessarily, in my mind, need to connect it to Corona and what's going on. I think that's where you might piss some people off. So I'll give you an example is that, like, you know, a lot of our sales reps, you know, will speak to our prospects and customers and talk to them about how G2 is like a 24/7, 365-day trade show. And, you know, with obviously SaaStr and all these trade shows being canceled, like that messaging plays really well into that. Like, hey, you were going to connect with, you know, maybe a few thousand prospects. Now you can connect with, you know, millions every month on G2.com. But that messaging works like regularly. But I think if you put the lens of like, these events have been canceled and this is a situation, come to us, it just feels really selfish. And so I think I've tried to be a proponent of, let's talk about like the value we have to people. You know, they can connect with buyers now, but like, let's not put it under the lens of it's harder to connect with buyers now because of what's going on. That's just sort of I think something that I've been trying to manage up to our leadership team to make sure that they don't kind of like be insensitive. I'd be curious like what you guys think, Anthony, Max.
Yeah. We did a very similar kind of doc like that, just to kind of set some guidelines. And then we have an amazing content team that's offered to help reps or anyone that's talking to customers to help kind of fine tune messaging and just ensure that we're being, you know, sensitive but empathetic, but also able to deliver the message that we're trying to deliver. So I think there's a lot of wisdom in doing that. The other thing that I'm curious if other folks are trying to think about is we're talking a lot about messaging right now. Are you looking at the core positioning, or at least from a campaign perspective? Because there's some, you know, conventional wisdom, at least. I think I saw some questions on this around like positioning as a need to have in times of you know, uncertainty or economic downturns versus a nice to have. And that's something, you know, creating kind of urgency as marketers, I think is an opportunity we have, but putting that revenue hat on, it feels like we have to be a bit more, I don't know, a bit more thoughtful with the words that we're using. So I don't know if anyone's looking at that again.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think you really run a risk of looking tone deaf. I saw an email this morning. Are you frustrated with your auto policy premiums? I'm like, all right, now that is the last thing I'm thinking about. And so you don't want to come across with something that's completely tone deaf. What you want to do is come up with ways where you're displaying that empathy. And when you look at the way that you're positioning your company, how can you help? Some of the things that I've been seeing that's been successful is reaching out to customers, existing customers, and saying, are you aware that in light of this problem, you've got already access to these features? And what I've been seeing happen from that is, oh, I've only got one group using this. I actually need to get everybody on this right now. And it's generating upsells and expansions. So it may not be as much new prospect acquisition, but absolutely the revenues are growing because of the fact that they're realizing, wait, I need to have the whole company on this thing that only the sales team is on, for example. So I think just always looking at when, whether or not it adjusts your corporate positioning, that's a completely different story. And I don't think I would stray far from your knitting on corporate positioning, but anything that you can do to show authentic empathy and heavy emphasis on the word authentic. Because if you come across like, hey, look at us, we're so compassionate and please buy all of our stuff, that it's going to come across really cheesy, and you don't want to do that. You want to be always thinking from the mindset of your prospect. The hairball that they're dealing with right now, which is every bit as bad as the hairball that all the rest of us are dealing with. How can you help them? And then do that in an authentic way. I'm seeing through trials that are generating a lot of, or free consulting hours, or, whatever, assessments, anything that shows that you're in it with them. Those are the sorts of things that I'm seeing be more successful.
Yeah, and I need to add on to like what Laurie said. One company that I thought did this really well was And again, it depends on the company and like what you can give, right? But I think Salesforce did a great job of giving away their health cloud to companies. Zoom did a great job of giving away their free Zoom to I think K-12 kids at schools. Being able to give something away for free, obviously, can be a great way to like build brand affinity and trust and just truly actually help people out.
Microsoft's doing a lot there too.
I think, and to your point, I think it's a little bit separate to the demand gen comms, but I don't know. I personally maybe slightly disagree, Laurie, in the sense that I almost think, if Progressive or whoever you said sent that email, like, they obviously still need to try and drive revenue, right? And so I think actually like the idea of sending an email that's not connected to what's going on right now, in some ways, I almost feel like it feels a bit cleaner to me, just personally, like my opinion, as opposed to being like, hey, this might be really tough for you, but buy from us. I kind of like to keep those things separate, but I think also this is like a time where you need to really think about like, are you a company that really should have a voice in sending out comms to your users, right? I'm sure like hundreds of us have probably received dozens, if not maybe like 50 plus emails from companies that maybe you bought something from 5 years ago. And even if you bought it, you might have bought it from them online. So it's like, there's no risk of like me getting corona from you. You do not need to send me anything. Like, I'm fine. I think like everyone has like a bit of like an action to want to do something, want to send something, and want to put their voice out there. But I don't think we all necessarily need to all the time. It's just my 2 cents.
From my perspective,
well,
if I could just
go for it.
I'm probably old enough to be most people's fathers. I began my business career in the mid 1970s, and I've been through, as a banker, and then in the semiconductor industry, I've been through a lot of deep recessions, and in the semi industry, a lot of bad cycles. And now I wear a different hat. I do executive search, and in fact, we've launched several searches in the last couple of weeks. And so what we're telling people is, plan for managing this crisis for sure, and do it in a very empathetic way, et cetera, et cetera. But also be prepared for the rebound. This is a temporary situation we're dealing with. And so companies that prepare for growth are ahead of the curve in some ways. And so we're just sort of reminding people that there is a future. We're all working from home now, and a lot of things have changed, but we just keep perspective here. And from our perspective, we're not trying to grab for short-term revenue. It's great if we can do it and we can position ourselves for that. But the important thing is just being prepared for the rebound, being prepared for growth. And again, from my personal perspective, we see employers getting ready. Some people are hiring, and those who aren't now, for obvious reasons, are thinking about what are their plans going to be. And so we're just trying to help lead the way, and not try to, let's say, push for near-term revenue, although near-term revenue is always good. So it's just a matter of just taking a step back a little bit and showing, showing some leadership and maturity in terms of how we position ourselves in the messaging.
That's a really good point. I think it's become cliche at this point, but the Mark Benioff quote on, wishing he had hired more reps or something during that last downturn. But our hiring has not slowed down yet on our side. In fact, if anything, I think we're excited about the point made earlier about, trying to show some leadership and posturing for what happens when this rebound comes. Now, we're deprioritizing certain roles. So, corporate events, sadly, field marketing, those things. But we know that we have hope that the day is coming where this is behind us, and we're able to come out stronger the other end. So I'm curious, Max, anything you want to touch on?
To tie these these last 2 points together, so we canceled our conference due to COVID in early March, and I got I don't know, maybe 20 emails from people that in the email it said, "Hey, sorry you had to cancel your conference due to COVID, but here, buy my virtual event software." And I realized that we were essentially like a BANT checkbox. I had the budget, I had the authority, I had the need, I had the timing, I had a compelling event. Everything in the sales book said I was the right target at the right time. But 1, I felt bombarded. 2, I was going through something. We just had to cancel an event that my whole team worked 9 months on. Like, I had to console people who were crying on my team. This was not a good time to be selling to me right after. But at the same time, we did need a virtual event solution. So it was one of those things where you understood exactly who was approaching it the right way, who like really wanted to build a long-term relationship with us and cared about our problem, versus who was using that as a inauthentic introduction to contact us and then go right into their pitch. And I ended up posting on LinkedIn about it, and it's got like 2,000 likes and comments, because I think it struck a nerve with people who are at this point, you know, understanding that there has to be another level of empathy included in in how you're going to market right now, whether it's sales, whether it's marketing, all across the board. You need to lead with authentic empathy, but you also need to think about revenue. But in this case, like, your Q1's already going to be your Q1. So now you're thinking about Q2 and Q3. And Jeff, like you said, I think this thing is going to slingshot back in Q4. So you have to build these long-term relationships with your customers. You don't want to be the person where, you know, okay, right now, let's say budget's on hold. You got a couple options. You can keep getting aggressive with that company and hope that you're going to free it up right now and be able to, like, you know, get it in Q2. You can risk burning the bridge greatly with that, or you can slow play it, show that you're a true partner, and hopefully get that in Q4. And this is the kind of pressure that we're going to deal with, you know, from up above and from the board and from the VCs or whatever you got. And right now, I think it's up to us to manage those expectations, to you know, make everybody understand that, like, hey, look, I think we're going to have a big shot at a big Q4, and we have to manage how our pipeline is going to work for the rest of this year. We're going to have to reforecast Q2 and Q3. But when it does rebound, when these budgets unfreeze, we haven't been told by anybody that, like, no, we're not going to do this anymore. But we have been told by people that, like, there's a lot of uncertainty right now. We're going to put this on pause for 6 weeks and then reevaluate. So you have to play the long game. You can't be short-term greedy. And you know,
I posted. I posted this morning. I posted this morning on LinkedIn exactly that. I have a pause and then I have a start button, and it's called Look Forward. And it's, you know, it's again having some perspective. We need to be concerned about the present, but we also have to plan for the future, because this is going to rebound. And again, I think that, you know, there's certain things we can't control. We can't control the buying habits of our customers, but we can control our messaging, and we can't control our facet of the relationship part of it. And if we do a good job of that, it'll translate through and it'll come back.
But I think that's also where, tying back to what everybody else was saying at the beginning, where it's like, we as leaders, that's how we keep our teams focused, right? We all have goals, we all have things that are going on, but I think that's where the people part of leadership comes in, of saying, hey, this is where we're at, right? This is the real talk. This is where we're all at. This is where the industry's at. But I've got your back, right? And I can help support you in keeping people positive. And that's, I think, where we as leaders can help our teams be supportive to take some of that pressure off and be positive and be supportive and talk about some of those things everybody was talking about before of, hey, gaming, I got your back, and how do we plan for the long term? And I think that's the people part of us being leaders, not just in marketing, but in our companies, to say, I got you, I'm supporting you, however you need it, but let's keep our eye on the long term and keeping that positivity going. I think that's part of our duty as leaders in this time too.
Totally. Yeah, we've started adopting the term positivity or possibility thinking internally when it comes to, you know, pulling deals in from Q2 to you know, help bridge or whatever the case is. So how can we think from a possibility thinking perspective? One question, Ryan, you brought up not being a cost center and being focused more as a revenue center in partnership with our sales and customer success teams. And Max, obviously, like, my heart goes out to Canceling Unleashed and all the work that went in there. How are we reorganizing budget or programs from a top of funnel perspective to drive pipeline, be it for, you know, that eventual Q4, be it to kind of bridge, you know, I think all of us, we have numbers for Q2 where we may or may not be reforecasting, but we still have targets. How are you thinking about, like, channels and spend and some of those seemingly more tactical kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, so I think fortunately for us, we actually, when we went into this year, we decided to move a lot of our events digitally firstly. So fortunately, we didn't have a whole lot of event budget that we needed to reallocate because we'd already kind of allocated that. And I'd love to say that, like, we were smart enough to see what was going on, and it was really more actually just like internal decisions to focus on higher ROI activities in the short term. And so I think that kind of made it easy. But I think like the way now we can be more of like a revenue center than a cost center is that like it's essentially about being really nimble. So, you know, we have a content team, and that, you know, the content teams typically focus on how do we attract millions and millions of buyers to G2.com every month through creating content on learn.g2.com. And I think I maybe mentioned a little bit earlier, but, you know, for some of our categories, and, you know, we're seeing 10 to 50x the amount of buyers that we would regularly see. So we don't have, you know, a deficit with traffic. So, you know, a lot of our content writers can then start to think, okay, how do we create content to help sales for more of our segments maybe, or for different regions where we in the past might not have had that kind of like focus around segments or, you know, custom content specifically for like smaller sales teams. Now is one of maybe those times where we lean more into like giving really custom content to sales, helping them create really compelling sales decks. So they're just like some of those things I think we're thinking about. I think the other thing that I try and think about with our demand gen team is, you know, they've always got a really long list of experiments and things that they're wanting to work on. And I'd say like now is the time to really lean into those experiments and see how do we reduce our CPA, our cost per acquisition, down as low as possible. So like a really simple example was that, like, you know, not too long ago, we started looking at, like, I think it's a tool called Flixel or Fraxel. And it basically, I don't know if you've seen them, the B2C companies do a really good job of this, but on social, there'll be like a still image and there'll be a part of the image that's moving. So it'll be like a video that's been taken. And then I think it's called Flixel. It allows you to basically say, hey, I want all of the video here to stay still. And this one part, maybe it's dripping water, or maybe it's like a bird or something. I want that to move. And when you put that on social through, like, whether it's social ads or just, you know, an organic social post, that the odd amount of movement in the image actually gets someone's attention, and you'll see, you know, a much, you know, higher engagement rate from users without having to do a whole lot. And something like that is just like a really easy way to, you know, get more engagement and then reduce your cost per acquisition. That's, again, like a very tiny example, but I think like leaning into the team around how do we do more innovative things right now and be really agile is key. We've actually got, I think, maybe in an hour or two, like an innovation showcase that we're doing as a marketing team to showcase, you know, what are some of the innovations that the team have worked on in the last 2 to 4 weeks that are outside the ordinary, not just like a standard A/B test, but like what are some things that we've done that have really pushed the needle, where we've really taken a risk. And so I think trying to encourage your team to take risks in those ways. Maybe don't take risks with like messaging around Corona stuff, but with your standard, you know, testing, this could be an interesting time to take a few risks and see if you can get lower CPAs.
Yeah, well, we had a conference. We got to mute somebody. We had a conference. We had to push.
I'm looking.
We got kids. Got the kids home. So we had a conference we had to push. So, you know, that was a big customer and prospect event for us. We have a road show that we do towards the end of the year that is a prospect road show. So we have 8 cities. So we expanded that to 12 cities, and we doubled the size of those to adjust them for customers and prospects. But in the meantime, we need, you know, to obviously build pipeline earlier in the year. So we're taking a lot of stuff online. You know, Sales Hacker, we happen to have Sales Hacker, which is a B2B, you know, media company for salespeople. So we're able to leverage certain things with that, you know, do more webinars with them, do more digital with them. But we also work with a lot of other communities. So there's, you know, for us, the Modern Sales Pros is a community for salespeople. The Revenue Collective is a community for salespeople. There are niche communities like Sales Assembly, which is a community for salespeople based in Chicago. There's a couple in a few of those in different geos that we can work with. So things that we're doing with them are we're actually doing a lot more surveys. And we're using surveys, one as content in other you know, demand gen initiatives, but we're also using the surveys as demand gen initiatives through those communities. So we leveled up there, upped our spend on some things we know work very well for us. LinkedIn ads is one of those. So we do a lot of advertising on LinkedIn. So just kind of doubling down on the things that we know that work right now. And then we just launched a virtual event. So we're hopeful that we'll get about 5,000 registrations for the virtual event. That's where we'll do our Unleash, our outreach keynote and our outreach product roadmap session. But we'll also do sessions with some of our larger customers, like the head of sales from Amazon Web Services is one of our speakers, who was originally slated to do our in-person conference, but is now doing our virtual event. So we kind of pivoted there. Yeah, that's the gist of it for now. We do some brainstorm sessions, like Ryan said, like Innovation Expo or whatever. What was it called?
Innovation
called?
Sessions?
Showcase? Yeah,
Showcase.
something like that. Showcase, yeah, Showcase. Yeah, so we have brainstorm sessions weekly. The team's coming up with their own ideas and things. We're doing, silly stuff like custom Zoom backgrounds for our sales reps, all the way down to, virtual event ideas to make it more interactive and engaging and increase signups. So, yeah, that's the gist of it for now.
One potentially interesting anecdote is back in my last job at Gainsight, we did a virtual event every year, the quarter after our live conference. And consistently every year we would get 1.5 to 2x the amount of registrations of the virtual event than we would the in-person event. And so this was obviously in, quote unquote, the best of times. Like virtual events, I think, are well attended. And for us, it was, cheap to execute. It wasn't too expensive, at least relative to doing a massive multi-thousand person event at a venue. Obviously you don't get some of the human connection that makes
it's different.
So good.
Yeah.
But in
we were gonna have 20 people from SAP and 20 people from Cisco come to our in-person conference, and the conversations you can have when you get them in the room with executives and they see your culture and they see you meet your employees. I mean, you can go deeper and bigger with companies, but the interactivity that you get virtually is still, I think, a big positive.
Totally. There's no doubt that it's not a full replacement for the live human experience. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But I heard from both Max and Ryan, content is cheap. It's something that's created typically in-house. It's something that gives us some leverage to get our message out to the right audience, and obviously using maybe some paid channels for amplification. But I think that's pretty wise in a world where we are being more cost conscious, to invest in some of the organic type of programs that we can build and deliver in-house. Okay. Moment of truth question. Are you guys buying software today? No pressure.
Oh yeah.
Nothing
stopped on our side, but a caveat, you raised what, 100 million in January, we raised 100 last year, so our businesses are probably different. If we were a Series A company or a Series B company, that had raised 2 years ago, I'd imagine that we would, be in a different situation. So, kind of like Jeff said, we know this is going to slingshot back at some point, and we want to be well prepared for that. I mean, we're investing in R&D, we're investing in sales, we're investing in all areas of our business, and we know that when this shock and scare subsides, it'll take a little while, but people wanted it before, that they'll want it when that happens, right? That's kind of our general mindset, right?
Totally. And Ryan,
on our side, I mean, given we're G2, we're pretty well stacked up when it comes to technology. we use a lot. To be honest, there's not really anything that we've been needing to buy. If anything, actually, we've been more so there's a train coming. If anything, we've been using one of our free products. It's actually called G2 Track, to work out like where we have like software that's maybe duplicative. So, we use two different tools to analyze sales reps' conversations to work out, what kind of pushbacks are they getting, who is bringing up discounting, tools like Chorus and Gong, etc. And so like for using G2 Track, we've been able to start to identify like, why do some teams have like duplicative software, and like, can we cut one of them? And again, purely for us, like it's just with, if we can cut some of those things earlier, then, we can save money, and make sure that we're just like prepping in advance for if, this thing goes for longer than it might go for.
I think an interesting point you brought up earlier, Ryan, too, was traffic is spiking on the platform, meaning like commerce in terms of buying software. You're seeing it even more or on increasingly volume than usual.
Definitely for like, yeah, reactive categories where like people need tools right now to keep functioning. So yeah, video conferencing, learning management tools, collaboration, to do softwares, etc. I think Zoom is literally getting about like 20x the number of buyers on their profile right now. Same goes for a lot of the different kind of collaboration apps and everything like that. So yeah, it's interesting to think about some of those businesses and like what must be going on for them. Obviously an exciting time on the revenue front, but then also I was noticing quite a lot of instability in my Zoom usage yesterday. And I wonder if just with all these new schools going online and doing it, like some of their systems are adjusting. And I then shifted to Google Hangouts and was having similar issues. So yeah, it's interesting times.
Well, shout out to the ops teams that are doing their best to keep whatever's left of the economy up and working. All right, maybe one last question, then we can open it up to plenty of questions here in the chat. So please keep them coming, or feel free to unmute. Max, SDR work. I know so much of your legacy heritage of the sales hacker business. You know this world really, really well. What are you telling the teams? What's we talked a little bit about messaging and tone and empathy, but how are they, what does Q2 look like for SDRs, and how can they be best for success?
We had one of our best pipeline days this month. We're still plugging along. I think we've probably adjusted, what we call our ICP, ideal customer profile. So there's some I'd say new audiences that we were going after, and some that we've kind of put on the back burner. Might not be the right time to reach out to. Right? What if you're selling to like doctors, right? What if you're selling to the medical industry, restaurants, small businesses, that kind of stuff? Probably not the right time. There are other ones that are a lot more interesting now. Like I said, we adjusted. Typically we sell to the prospecting function, and then we go what's called wall to wall. So we'll go SDRs, then AEs, then customer success. We're seeing a lot more success with account executives right now because a lot of the field folks are coming in-house. So, we help with a lot of the things that remote working typically hurts. So we've adjusted in those ways who we're targeting. Obviously, we've adjusted the language that we're using, how we're approaching with empathy first, how we are contacting people and kind of asking, what the best way to keep in touch with is, which I think is the best practice in general that we've typically adopted, but making sure now more than ever that we do it across the board. But goals have not changed for us yet. And again, we don't know where this is going and how long it's going to be. So I can't tell you if there's going to be an adjustment there, but so far we have not adjusted anything yet. People are still working. We're still selling to corporates, for example. People are still selling, paying their cell phone bills. AT&T still needs software, right? So just so happens that's the way it is for our business. Can't say it's going to be the same for everybody else, but that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, we're seeing the same and kind of handling it on a week by week basis, I think, with everyone else and trying to navigate it. One other thing I'll just add before maybe we open it up is we had just an interesting brainstorm around ways that we can actually help. And I know that's not appropriate perhaps for every business or every product, but we were inspired by what the folks at Slack have done, and Box offering up kind of for those working on either research or relief or something, ways to really kind of help, play a part in accelerating that progress. And so that's something that we're working on right now. But let's open it up. Any questions that anyone wants to bring up? You might hear a 18-month-old in the background here in a second, so conveniently muting out. But let me see. There was a couple questions here in the chat. So This is actually interesting. So the idea of the leadership teams should, and I think we started talking about this earlier, but not wanting to come across as tone deaf, but maybe this is on the corporate marketing, brand, PR, comm side. Should you as a brand have something to say in this moment of uncertainty, be it for customers or markets at large? Is there an onus on leadership to kind of stand up and say something publicly?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on your business, right?
Yeah.
I've received so many emails where it's really irrelevant. You know, like my bank sent me something and I was like, you know, like I haven't been into a bank branch for 10 years. Like I'm good, like we're fine here. But then on the flip side, I use this meal delivery service called Sprinly that does like pre-prepared vegan meals that are really delicious. And they sent an email talking about how all their staff already like wear gloves for everything that they do, but now they're like sanitizing, you know, high usage areas, door handles, light switches every 30 minutes. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. Like I love, like that's a really useful thing for me to know. Like you guys are being really clean and safe. Like thumbs up, you know. And that's something that I guess I think you need to think about like what is the frequency of interaction that you have with your customers, and you know, on a weekly basis, we're getting an interaction from them where they're shipping something to our house that we're consuming. So I guess it's kind of intimate. And for that, it made a lot of sense. I pushed pretty hard against G2 doing something because I didn't think that like it mattered enough for us to have a voice in this right now. We don't have physical stores. We're helping people buy software. It didn't feel like it was right for us to necessarily do a communication out to our, you know, millions of
If your product physically touches people, then the CEO should have at least some kind of email communication that goes out. I also think like in the sense of a bank, it'd be great to have a video from a CEO embedded in an email that says like, hey, your money's safe. Like we're not going out of business. If you bank here, it's okay. Like we're going to get through this together. It's all good. We got you. I read articles about people going to banks and trying to take out, you know, tens of thousands of dollars of their money because they're worried that, you know, this is going to be some kind of an apocalypse. So having an email from that person that's somewhat, you know, reassuring, I don't think is the worst thing. I do like the delivery service companies that are sending those emails and saying, hey, we're, you know, here are the things we're doing, like DoorDash right now. DoorDash is blowing up. Everybody's getting delivery, right? So, you know, the CEO coming out and saying the things exactly like you were saying, I think is definitely a positive and very necessary. And the airlines too, you know, we don't know what's going to happen with them. Very worried about that. Been collecting Delta miles for a long time. Don't want to lose my, you know, Delta status, right? We also have, you know, trips planned in the future. Am I going to be able to like, you know, cancel those and move those without having to pay a penalty if this thing continues, right? So, you know, reassuring messages from folks like that. Airbnb, if you have Airbnbs booked in the future, you know, other hotel chains. So I think, you know, yeah, go for it.
I think the chairman of Kimberly-Clark or P&G or whoever should buy TV time and go on television and just reassure the public that we're making plenty of toilet paper and just chill, guys. Don't hoard it. There's plenty coming. I'm being facetious here, but quite honestly, you know, there's a real problem out there.
Yeah.
There's a really good supply chain analyst who's currently fighting the virus, who wrote an amazing blog post on how to kick the supply chain back into gear. Her name is Laura Cesari.
Super interesting.
Check that out. Yeah.
Yeah, and even just like brands, I think I saw LVMH, right, are converting their factories in France that do perfumes to now just producing like hand sanitizer that they're going to give away for free. To me, that's like a perfect example of a brand doing something good and also building like brand affinity, brand trust, and reputation. Yeah, it's nice when you see that.
Designer hand sanitizer, I like that.
Well, we're out of time, so I want to thank my co-host, for everyone that participated. Thank you for being a part of this. This is recorded, and so we'll go ahead and send this out for those that are interested. And we are going to be back next week, where we have Maria Pergolino from Active Campaign, Udi from Gong, and David Gerhardt from Privy that are going to be joining us next week. So if you're interested, I'll send the invite back out. Feel free to decline if it doesn't work out. But thank you so much. everyone for being a big part of this.
Thank you.
That's going to be such a good one. Those are a couple studs right there. They're great.
Totally.
Yeah. Send me the link.
I will send you the link. You're welcome to join.
Jump on.
All right.
I'm just going to listen in.
Awesome. Sounds good. All right,
Thanks so
everyone.
much.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you all.